it does seem that, yes, social media is having a negative impact. It isn't only negative. There are a lot of positives. So again, it's this more nuanced perspective around it.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of 80% Mental, a podcast all about the psychology underpinning sport, performance, health and well-being, and just whatever else I feel like talking about. We're halfway through series 4 of the podcast now, and we've sort of shifted away from sport a little bit to focus on how psychology plays a role more in our overall well-being. And we've talked about exercise, we've talked about immune function, mental health, burnout, disordered eating, and bad science, among other things. So make sure when you finish listening to this episode that you go and check out some of the other episodes available wherever you normally listen. It's been a little while since we did one of these crossover episodes, and I'm really excited for this episode because we're going to look basically at why the internet's so full of shit.
Yep.
But essentially we're going to dig into like how our online lives might be having an impact on us psychologically. And maybe what we can do about that as well. And I've teamed up with my two guests today, Dr. Laura Swetnam and Dr. Kristen McGinty-Minister from ButWhy podcast. And we're just going to pick apart all of that stuff. So Laura and Kristen, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Welcome to 80% Mental.
Thank you so much for having us on. We were really excited to come. I think it'd be a really great conversation because it's not often we actually get to talk to other doctors of psychology, especially in sport, about any of these topics. Even if we're not addressing sport, I think it still has a lot of applications to what we're doing. So
100%. Yeah. Well, 100%, well, not just 80%, 100%.
I like we did that.
I think as well. So this topic, I think it's so relevant for all of us. And I just think, yeah, there is so much misinformation and I think just so much overwhelm with what we have kind of on the internet nowadays. So it would be, interesting to get your guys' kind of thoughts on how we manage this.
Yeah, I'm going to try and not sound like a really old man throughout this episode, because it's kind of easy when you're talking about this stuff to just sound like a grumpy old git. But I'm going to try and not do that. But just by way of introduction for people who maybe aren't familiar with you guys, Laura, you're a sport and exercise psychologist and a senior lecturer at Liverpool John Moores University. And your research interests are around performance and well-being and professional practice and equity in traditional sports and esports as well. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
And just for the uninitiated, like what actually are esports? What does that sort of encompass?
Yeah, so esports, they're basically it's basically competitive video gaming. So I suppose, you have your more casual gaming, which might look more like, let's say if you're playing, I was going to say Mario Kart, but you might actually have that competitively now, but it might be things like Zelda, for example. So more like an RPG, like adventure game where it's not bound by kind of league systems or kind of competitive tournaments. So your esports is very much that competitive scene. And it has, it is very popular. There's a lot of money in it. And there's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. And so the players and the staff within those spaces really benefit from psychological support.
Yeah. Are you a gamer yourself?
I'm a gamer. I don't play esports, but I am a gamer.
Okay.
Mostly, again, at the moment, I'm trying to get through God of War Ragnarok in between all of my marking, which is really difficult. I have found that now that I'm getting older and I actually have real responsibilities, gaming is so difficult to fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kristen is a gamer herself. So
not really. Not like you. No.
You just loved Harry Potter, right?
Yes, yeah. Which now I'm kind of regretting with all the drama surrounding J.K. Rowling and everything.
This is true. This is true.
I'll play the occasional Pokemon game.
Already throwing out controversial things.
Yeah.
No, well, I've finished God of War Ragnarok. I thought it was fantastic, and I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima now.
Oh, okay, cool.
Which is it's beautiful. It's an absolutely stunningly beautiful game.
Yeah, that is the thing, that these
Bit
things
violent,
really
but, you know.
are. That they are art forms, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like, there's a cozy Lord of the Rings game coming out in a couple of months, so Tales of the Shire, and I'm so excited for that, and it does just look beautiful. So yeah, I can't wait for that.
That's my kind of game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kristen, what about you then? So you're a sport and exercise psychologist as well, and a lecturer at Manchester Met. And your focus is kind of on equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as mental health and performance. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
So what drew you to psychology in the first place? Is like human behavior something you've always been like interested in?
That's like an unknowingly complicated question or answer that actually has changed over the years. I used to think it's because I wanted to be a lawyer, because I enjoy making arguments. I enjoy reading and theory and philosophy and things like that. And so I thought, okay, well, to become a lawyer, I think knowing psychology will be fantastic and fascinating, and political science. And then I fell in love with psychology, and kind of was choosing between the forensic and the sport route, and ended up in sport because of my own sporting background. But then when I'm looking at it as like kind of from the late diagnosed autistic perspective, you learn that a lot of undiagnosed autistic women tend to end up in fields like sociology or psychology, because you're trying to really understand human behavior that you're not really quite grasping in the same way as everyone else. And when I apply that lens to kind of my more current reflections, especially going over my professional doctorate and things like that, I go, actually, that probably was it. Like, I had a logical reason for why I was doing it, but really it was just being fascinated by and trying to understand the human experience, really.
Okay. You mentioned sport there as well. What was your sport?
I was a volleyball player.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so lots of jumping and no running for me.
Yeah, well, if you're anything like me, my knees are absolutely screwed now from 20 years of basketball. So.
Oh yeah. I forgot you were into basketball. I know the English basketball scene quite well, because my partner Jack, he played for Great Britain here for a while too. So probably know a lot of the same people. But yeah, my knees are gone. Jack can hear me walking through the house, just the clicking in my ankles and my knees.
So as I mentioned earlier, you've both got your own podcast, the ButWhy podcast. And the blurb says, real talk on messy minds and messier systems. And you explore the human experience through a psychological lens and the systems that shape that experience. So how did this podcast come about? Tell me a little bit about that, first of all, Laura.
Me. So it came about by Kristen saying, do you want to do a podcast with me? I mean, being like, okay, what are we going to talk about? And it kind of started, I think, by us just partially kind of us wanting to have more time talking together, because we did a professional doctorate together. But kind of after that, it is hard to stay in touch nowadays, isn't it? So it was kind of for us to get together and talk about things that we cared about, talk about things that gave us rage, kind of explore, I suppose, our own identities and things like that. And it's probably getting a bit more of a theme now, I suppose. So in terms of this kind of messy minds and like messier systems sort of vibe. But previously, it's just kind of been, what do we think is interesting? What are people going to find useful? And also, I suppose, in a way, trying to, around this idea of like misinformation, trying to just talk in a more authentic way around some of these topics and kind of recognize the nuance that's within it.
Cool. And Kristen, what are some of the topics that you've talked about? What kind of things do you cover?
So we've covered everything from psychological safety through to New Year's resolutions. We do a lot on gendered experiences, just because that's an area that we feel we have expertise in, and we never want to overstep our boundaries, but basically things that we think will be useful to people that are often either buzzwords that are used incorrectly in business and things like that, or things that are almost sometimes gatekept in the academic community, or might be difficult to have access to understanding of those things. So one of my favorite episodes actually was one of our earlier ones. We had a 2-part on the history of witches. And I think that was more of a learning experience for both of us because we didn't know anything about the topic. So it's fun. We're kind of going back and forth between talking about things that we do know from that psychological experience that we have, but then also things that we're learning along with listeners, which I've found quite interesting.
Definitely.
We'll stick a link to your podcast in the episode description for this one. So when you finish listening to this, make sure you finish listening to this one first, then go and check out the ButWhy podcast with Laura and Kristen. Let's get into the topic. Let's get into what we're talking about today. And speaking of podcasts, maybe that's probably a good place to start, I think. There's lots of them. There's lots of podcasts around, and part of the problem with podcasts is that the most popular podcasts are the ones where guests come on and say controversial things and clickbaity things, right? And I don't need to name them because I think we all know who they are, and I don't really want to get sued. But things like Diary of a CEO and Joe Rogan, for example. So I'm kind of interested to get your thoughts on this, but I thought we'd start with a little game. And the game is called, Is This a Real Quote from a Podcast? Or have I just made this up in the last 20 minutes?
Oh, exciting.
Yeah.
I'll probably think all of it's podcasts.
Okay, all right. So let's start with the first one. Then. Okay, more people die every year from solar energy than from nuclear. Guess how you die from solar? You fall off the roof when you're installing it. Is that a real quote, or did I just make that up?
It's like it's meant to be a bad joke.
Yeah. I feel like there's some nuance to that, so I feel like you could have just made that up.
No, that was our good friend Jordan Peterson on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Oh, my favorite.
Was he trying to say? Was he saying that to be funny? Like, was it like meant to be sarcastic, or that was like deadly serious?
I think he was genuinely suggesting that more people die from solar.
I don't know if he has a sense of humor, Laura.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah. Okay, do you want another one?
Yes.
Let's do it.
There's no such thing as climate. Climate and everything are the same word. That's what bothers me about climate change types. It's the same with the word environment. It means so much that it doesn't mean anything.
I feel like that's a podcast.
I was going to say, did you make that up?
No, that was Jordan Peterson on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, I thought that was that one. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, you might know this one. Just visualizing lifting weights can improve muscle mass in weightlifters by 13%.
Oh my God. Podcast?
Yeah, I guess podcast.
Yeah, that was Dr. Tara Swart on Diary of a CEO. And in fairness, I think she might have misspoken, but nobody picked her up on it. So visualizing lifting weights cannot increase your muscle mass.
Dang, I was going to use that instead of going to the gym today. I'm kind of disappointed.
Yeah. Doing all this time.
Imagine, right? Okay, last one. Following a keto diet can treat cancer, and modern cancer treatments are medieval cures.
I feel like you're just trying to rage bait me for this part of the episode.
I wouldn't do that.
I'm going to just have to go podcast.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, these are all from podcasts. This was Dr. Thomas Seyfried on Diary of a CEO again.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I couldn't make anything up that was sillier than these.
Yeah.
So,
it's a difficult task.
Fair.
But I spoke with Dr. Nick Tiller on an episode of this podcast recently about how we can maybe get better at recognizing some of this stuff and picking apart some of the misinformation, because like I say, the clips that go viral and the podcasts that are really popular, all of this clickbait, like sensationalist stuff. But how can we pull apart some of this stuff? How can we get better at recognizing misinformation in what is essentially an unregulated medium?
I am quite cynical about this because I have some opinions, and this is kind of like it's not going to directly answer, but I feel a little bit bad for people because I do feel like in a lot of places like the US, currently, and for the last 20 years, we've kind of destabilized our public education and critical thinking application skills. And so people are coming into this whole new kind of era of fast information without even the skills we were taught when we were kids, to kind of even that you need to apply critical thinking to these things. So some people are coming into this without even considering that they have to decipher between like misinformation and true information. So there's that aspect. So I guess from my point of view, I don't know. I guess that's a more systemic approach, but do you have any thoughts, Laura? Because it's something that always just makes me really mad, and I could probably go get stuck on that. So I'm going to transfer it over to you for now.
No, over to me. Okay. The first thing I think that came to mind was, well, but why? Because this is a thing that we're asking all the time. So just questioning this, but why? But that comes into what you're saying, Kristen, in terms of having critical thinking around it. And then there's a bigger question of, do we even know how to do that now? Like, are we questioning things enough? Are we just taking things at face value too often? It's kind of the easier route, right? But I think there is something in kind of remembering that, like, we have, I suppose, like a choice in terms of, one, kind of what content we're consuming. In a sense, this is the thing. It's also nuanced. Like, do we actually have choice? I think we have some choice in how we consume content, but actually there's so many algorithms. You step out of the door and you're getting like advertised things. So I think it really takes, I think, some deep thought to consider, how are we like managing the content that we are taking in? Because it's really difficult to do nowadays. But when we do kind of take in that content, how are we questioning it? Are we having discussions about it? Are we being reflective about it? Or, like I say, are we just taking it at face value? Because sometimes things do seem on the surface like it might be legit, but a lot of the time it's either not, or there is this nuance that hasn't been considered in that, say, very short, like 15-second video that we've just been watching.
That kind of made me think. I feel like there's two things to kind of keep an eye out for. So if somebody is saying something that's completely outside your worldview, that's somehow slipped into your algorithm and it causes you quite a bit of ambivalence or cognitive dissonance, whether that's like a physical or a mental reaction, maybe just explore why. And maybe that's one way to kind of question the information you're getting. And also, if it's something that you're learning from a podcast or TikTok, and it's something that you plan on initiating and using in your real life, just use Google. Like, maybe like if you're actually going to apply this to your life, just take one extra step and just do a quick check. Like, if somebody told me that about, you can use imagery to gain muscle mass, I probably would have gone, oh, that's great. I wonder if it's true, and just check Google. But again, that goes back to like what Laura says, is, do we even have that capacity a lot of the time?
It's like you're already on the internet, you might as well. But I think this thing around questioning is really important, because I have a fairly sensitive bullshit detector, I think. So if I hear something like that, my immediate response is, well, that doesn't sound right. Like that feels off. And then we'll go and kind of look it up and look at the research. But I guess if you don't grow up and are not educated in a way that allows you or encourages you to question things like that, then you're perhaps more likely to take those things at face value, I guess.
Totally. And I definitely think that kind of like how you're raised, to even if you're able to question authority or something that's seen as authority, is a massive thing as well. And I also, that also made me think of the different types of bullshit that will be out there. Is it lying? So is there intent there to deceive the people, or is it just like actual bullshitting? So is it indifference to the truth and they're just doing it to make money? And I think even starting to be able to detect the difference between those is really useful. So we can relate the kind of bullshitting aspect to certain people that, maybe my current president, he doesn't really, I don't think he's actively lying all the time. I think it's just like, just going about it. I love Tesla, that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. To the actual lying aspect of it, which is some other people that you might have around him. And I think being able to say, okay, well, I can tell that's false, but then why is it false? Or even just starting by questioning any information. But I guess that could probably drive you a little crazy as well.
And this is what I was thinking too, is that almost like from my personal experience, it depends on my energy levels and like how stressed I am. If I feel like I actually have the capacity to question it and to go and do this searching kind of into it, right? So on some days, perhaps we're even like more susceptible to this kind of misinformation than others. So again, in those senses, perhaps it is just trying to kind of switch off for it when we recognize that we just can't take any more of this information. But I think something else that I think is useful is kind of questioning the purpose of the content. So I think not always, but I think sometimes you can tell if someone's content is there to actually help you or if it is there just for money making or you know, getting clicks or whatever it is. So like what is the purpose of what you're consuming, and almost trying to go onto these platforms, going onto social media in a way that is purposeful for us. Like, why am I doing it? What do I actually want to see? Like, what am I trying to find information out about?
Yeah, I think it's like the more you do that sort of thing as well, the easier it gets to detect it. So the more that you kind of question, like the more natural it is. So, you know, you're talking about there about is this kind of like appeal to authority bias, isn't it? If somebody is like on a podcast and they have credentials, then they're probably going to be right about what they're saying. But can we look at, well, why are they saying that? Like, what are they investing in? Like, what fingers have they got in what pies, and like how might what they're saying be like beneficial to them somewhat. So it's kind of like exploring that stuff. And I think the more that you do it, the more that you question, the easier it gets and the less effortful it becomes. But I was going to ask you both, you know, what are some of the psychological factors really that can contribute to the spread of misinformation? You know, Laura, you just mentioned there about some of the kind of personal factors, like if we're a bit fatigued, we're probably less likely to question stuff, right? What else is there? What are the psychological factors that help spread this misinformation?
Ooh. I think, well, obviously there's the obvious hijacking of our dopamine systems. That's just the easiest kind of, I think that's probably the first thing that these platforms probably picked up on, is that that's what it was doing. And then I think from then on, it was more of a actual psychological approach on how to lean into systems that already exist, how to initiate confirmation bias through the algorithm. So, I mean, like you said, that critical thinking and even questioning things is a skill that you develop, because really the reason that we're all stuck in our little algorithmic bubbles is confirmation bias. is and I think they're hijacking the fact that humans, we want comfort, we want our kind of sense of self and our values to not be seen as bad or wrong in whatever way. And so existing even online outside of that is super uncomfortable. And I think that's kind of been hijacked as well.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I think as well, obviously kind of alongside, you know, if we are almost like using up those dopamine reserves, if you like I'm not sure what the actual scientific term would be. But if we're kind of constantly getting these kind of quick hits from social media, then that's meaning that we can't engage with other like more meaningful tasks as well. So maybe that's meaning that we aren't motivated to do, say, even like going out with a friend or kind of doing certain kind of work tasks or other things that might be fulfilling our life. It means that we may not feel like we have the energy to do that. It might lead to things like anxiety, for example. And we're seeing this a lot in like teenagers. I think there's some research kind of around this area. Fact check me, please. But in terms of how it is so damaging for well-being, for anxiety and so on. And I think this is then a big consideration, I guess, from a sports psych perspective as well, in terms of how we're working with young people and kind of supporting them and understanding some of the really detrimental impacts of actually being on social media so much and consuming information in this way.
So this is the 80% Mental Podcast. I'm here with Dr. Laura Swetnam and Dr. Kristen McGinty Minister. We've been talking about the internet, a kind of huge thing that has basically taken over all of our lives in the last 20 years. But it kind of its impact on our mental health, how we might deal with that. We're just sort of kind of getting into a little bit there about kind of the algorithm and how the algorithm gets you, I guess, sort of like quick dopamine hits that the algorithm provides, right? And we just scroll and scroll and scroll. And I think it's really easy to say, like on a surface level, right? Our attention spans are shortening. We need these short bursts of information, and kids can't concentrate these days. And it's because of YouTube, and it's because of Instagram, and it's because of TikTok. From your perspective as a psychologist, like, is that a fair thing to say? Like, or is that just like a really simplistic, let's blame it on the internet. The internet's bad. It's ruining our attention. Because I don't know what the answer is.
I always almost, I'm probably going to make myself sound old, but I was thinking about this in terms of like when I was younger. And the thing then was, of course, like, oh, you don't want to watch too much TV. Like, it's going to like make your eyes go square. I loved and still love TV. Watched so much of it.
Have you not heard that one, Kristen?
No.
Have you not heard it?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I got. You mustn't have watched enough TV.
Yeah, you learn something new every day. I might fact check that. I'll give it a quick Google.
I think you should fact check. Yes. But I think kind of with that, it makes me think, it was that then, and this is this now, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's almost a sense of like, if it wasn't this, kind of would it be something else, or kind of what else is going into this, or again, like, what are or how is this going to progress kind of down the line? So I don't know if this is necessarily answering the question, but I think it's more that there seems to be, I guess, this evolution of how we are using, I guess, media, if you like, whether that's from, when I was younger and watching a lot of TV, or even spending a lot of time, say, on MSN, things like that. And how potentially that was taking me away from doing like schoolwork, for example. But maybe it was having really beneficial outcomes in terms of actually my social life and being able to communicate in a space where I felt comfortable. And I'm sure that social media nowadays has that for young people and for everybody, like for adults as well. It's a great way to communicate and to keep in touch with people. So I think that while from what I've kind of read, it does seem that yes, social media is having a negative impact. It isn't only negative. I think there are a lot of positives to it as well. So again, it's this more nuanced perspective around it.
Totally. I think that's the thing to keep in mind is social media is having a negative impact, but it doesn't have to. And I think that it is, like you said, very simplistic to say, oh, it's shortening our attention spans. It's providing, adolescents with XYZ information that they really shouldn't have. But the issue is they could be having access to really great information. And it could be when the internet was around, when at like early 2000s, it was kind of known as like the great equalizer, because now everyone's going to have access to all of this information, and people who might not be in more privileged positions might be able to access information that was gatekept for a while. But unfortunately, I think all these platforms understood what makes money is kind of this almost threat response, confirmation bias. All of these kinds of things are going to make more money than creating positive impacts on people. So really what it's done is it's kind of made people more isolated. It's created more extreme views in either directions. And I think that, it's one thing to say, yeah, parents are maybe doing XYZ wrong with their kids and social media, but it's also something that we were very unprepared for. So I don't really know if that answers your question appropriately, but that's just, it's kind of hard from a psychological point of view to say whose fault is it? Because I think it's more of a societal issue than anything else.
Yeah, I want to come back to that in a minute, but Laura, something you said just kind of reminded me of a conversation I had just yesterday, actually, which was about like delayed gratification. And, when I was a kid, I'd watch like an episode of Mysterious Cities of Gold, and then I'd have to wait a week to find out what happened.
Yes.
And there's the sort of, the waiting part of it, but there's also like the imagination part of it. Oh, I wonder what's going on here. I wonder what's going to happen here. Like, oh, what's this person doing? And that sort of like imagination and speculation that we just don't have now, because we can just watch the next episode straight away. So I think there was a program. Have you seen The Residents?
No.
It's on Netflix. It's absolutely brilliant, but it's kind of like a crime comedy drama whodunit type thing. And someone was writing the other day about the fact that streaming has ruined it, because the purpose of a program like that is that you watch one episode and then you wait and think about it and digest it and then see what happens like next week. But if you kind of binge watch it, it ruins the experience. But I don't know if you have any thoughts around that, or if you kind of about that sort of delay in gratification and what's that done to us, the ability to just watch 6 hours worth of a series in one go.
Yeah, I was honestly thinking about this the other day, but in relation to House, House MD.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember I used to record it when the new episodes were on, and I'd come back from school and I'd like be ready to watch it. And I'd be so excited. And it recently came on Netflix, I think, like all of the series. And I was thinking, you know what? If I tried to binge watch that, I don't think I'd be able to, because it really kind of repeats, the same. Kind of, I don't know if the right word's trope, but the same sort of ingredients, if you like, kind of around each episode. I don't think I would be able to watch it or enjoy it in the same way. So I think it has certainly like taken something away from us in terms of just having something to look forward to. And I think now, even if I'm, a new series is coming out and it is coming out like an episode a week, I'm like, no, this is rubbish.
Yeah.
And then actually I kind of lose interest, and then I might not watch the whole thing. And so it is so interesting how we've changed in terms of that, again, in terms of how we're consuming information and our preferences around that, but also how it's kind of taken like a little bit of magic away from being able to wait for things. And I think it does mean that we are now just so impatient. I notice it in myself, so impatient with things, even with like, Amazon Prime. Oh, just order it and get it the next day. Like there is nothing that allows us to stop and pause and think, do I actually need this thing? Or what's going to happen next in this TV show? So I think this pause is something that we really lost.
Yeah, sorry. I was like really reflective just thinking about my own life when you were just talking just then. I really miss that, because I remember coming home from school and like for me it was like anime shows like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Sailor Moon, and I would just have this block of 1 hour that I was so excited, and then I would do my homework, and then it just does take that magic away when you can binge watch it. And I think I've seen some research out recently that our attention is so different now, like our attentional focus to what it was 10 years and 15 years ago. And I think that there's less deep focus on stuff, and it's more down to like skimming and quick information. And I really quick task switching, which is not a like necessarily a strength of mine. And so I really miss the ability to kind of like get excited about something, prepare for it, engage in it, reflect on it. And like you said, the imagination aspect of it, I think, is something where we already see kind of attack might be a bit of an aggressive word, but like an attack on creativity in the arts and this kind of like aspect of being human, that kind of that delayed gratification aspect used to still work within that humanity that we have. Whereas I think that the quick access to information almost is taking us a step further outside of that, because while you can access more creative things, we're not encouraged to through the current structures.
I often find myself watching things on double speed as well. I don't know when I started doing that, but it's just impatience. It's just impatience.
That sounds overwhelming for me.
I've only recently tried this out, but what I find is I can only go to like 1.2 times. Otherwise, the voices start to like sound like chipmunks, and it really puts me off. So, yeah.
But coming back to what you were talking about before, Kristen, you were talking about kind of being unprepared almost for this internet age and some of the perhaps negative aspects of being online and having our online lives. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was like comments sections. And it was on one of your, I think it was on one of your TikToks recently. You just got like a barrage of content of comments from really angry, unhappy men because you dared to say something, it was perfectly legitimate thing to say. Like for me, comment sections on the internet are absolutely hilarious, but they're also at the same time can be really, really toxic. And again, I just wondered what your take on it is. Is this like people being emboldened by anonymity, or is it more of a reflection of actually, this is actually who we are, and we've just got an outlet for it? Just your thoughts.
Yeah, so I unfortunately very rarely find the comment sections funny, at least in my comment sections, because apparently most of my short form content produces a lot of cognitive dissonance in people who just feel the need to say something about it. There's an aspect of, obviously Laura and I act from quite privileged positions within society, but still being a woman on the internet, immediately no. There's a lot of ableism on the internet. So, if you're autistic, you might feel the pressure to perform online. There's a lot of tone policing to the extent that, Laura, I haven't told you about this yet. We got a comment yesterday saying that we're performing autism as a quirky personality trait. And so if you're not fitting that vibe, I get attacks constantly. Yeah, I know.
Is that like meant as a compliment or something?
No, he was mad. He was an autistic man that was very mad about our autism.
Wow.
I get attacks because on education level, attacks around the misunderstanding of what a psychologist does. Everyone thinks it's to make them comfortable when really my idea is it's to provide reflection and uncomfortability. So my experience is very different. And I see kind of two sides to this. So I feel like, yes, it's a hijacking of our psychology. So it's the kind of like anonymity, it's disinhibition. Sorry, I can never say this word, disinhibition. Kind of that I'm getting on a roll. So Laura knows when this happens, I start to like stutter or make up words on accident. So yeah, I think people just feel braver to say stuff online. I feel like moral outrage is a new kind of virtue signaling that we have nowadays. But I also think it's a bit of a reflection of the current systems that we have in power. So it's a reflection of society as well as how they're hijacking our psychology. So I think what I've seen, at least, is these algorithms are really reinforcing the existing social hierarchies that we have. Like I highlighted ableism and misogyny, but there's definitely a lot of racism on there and things like that. And from my perspective, I've seen myself and others, I've seen the internet really punish people who kind of step outside the hegemonic norm. And that's, I think, more of a reflection of, we just look back the last 100 years and that, the internet's just the new space for that. But it's so much worse because it's quick. And now you have anonymity and everyone has opinions and you can find something on the internet to back up your opinion no matter what. So I do think that, yes, there's a it's that mix again. So it's the reflection of society and the forces that are impacting our psychology as well. Sorry, I went on a little rant there. It happens.
Laura, what about you? Because you say you don't spend that much time on sort of social media.
Not in comment sections and not posting my own content.
Never read the comments. Never read the comments.
No.
I remember Kristen and it was Amy. Do you know Amy Whitehead? So we do a lot of work with Amy. And I remember you guys said to me, Laura, you're just like lurking on Instagram and like looking at all of our stories because I just don't post anything. Yeah. So then I did start to kind of post a little bit, but I don't know. I just feel like it distracts me from life, I suppose. I think it's kind of funny because I used to engage so much online when I was younger, but it was mostly around like playing video games online and like talking to people online and things like that. But I think that these spaces have just become so toxic now that even spaces like that, like say in like gaming and in esports and so on, become so toxic, especially kind of like Kristen's saying, like being a woman in these spaces can be even more challenging. So it is something that I actively like try not to engage with that much. And I think it kind of started from, it was a number of years back. I actually deleted like my Instagram accounts and things. And just felt so much better for it. And now I just have a 30-minute timer on, and I just go on it for like 30 minutes a day and try to do, don't do any more than that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it means Kristen has to do all of the podcast stuff. And I'm like, yeah, Kristen, you deal with those comments. I'm just going to sit over here in my bubble. So I do feel a little bit guilty about that.
I think only one of us should have to suffer. And so I'm happy to take that on.
I appreciate that.
This is the 80% Mental podcast, and I'm here with Dr. Laura Swetnam and Dr. Kristen McGinty-Minster. And we've been talking about the internet and why it's awful, but also, potentially useful. If you've enjoyed what you've been listening to, don't forget to subscribe at 80percentmental.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at EPM Podcast or on Instagram at 80percentmental. So about this time in the podcast, I don't know if you've listened to any recent episodes. You should. We like to kind of get to know our guests a little bit better because we've been talking about, the topic, but I'd like to get to know you as people, and so would our listeners. So I've got a little game to play, and I haven't got a name for it, but would you be up for playing our Getting to Know You game?
Let's do it.
Yes, I suppose we have to. So yes.
I mean, it's not, I feel like I've offered it as an option, but no one's ever said no. Yeah. Okay, so the idea is I've got 4 virtual envelopes here, and within each envelope is a set of questions. So we've got this or that, favorites and firsts, hypotheticals, or perspectives. And I'm going to get you to pick a number. You're going to agree on a number between 1 and 4, and I will open up my virtual envelope that contains a set of questions. So can you agree on a number?
Laura?
I was going to say 3.
I was going to say 2, but I'm happy with 3. Let's do 3.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. Do 3? Okay.
Let's do 3.
Final answer?
Final answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
What have we got? Okay, so we've got hypotheticals.
Oh gosh.
So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, like hypothetical questions. Don't think too much about it, and we'll see where we get to. Okay. So question 1: if you could live in any time period, past or future, when would that be? Let's go with Kristen first.
I've thought about this a lot.
Okay. That's a first.
Because there are so many drawbacks and positives. If there would have to be very specific conditions, is I would really enjoy being a queen in the medieval times. So I could wear the dresses. But outside of that, I wouldn't really enjoy it.
Fair enough. Entirely superficial reasons. Love it. Laura, what about you? Have you given this as much thought as Kristen clearly has?
No, I don't think I have. Let me see. Okay, the only thing I'm thinking is I would love to go back to when it's like the grunge sub pop era in like Seattle, when it's kind of just emerging, if you like. So probably like if I was, say, late teens, early 20s, when it was like the mid 80s, 90s. So maybe if I was just born like 10 years earlier, that would be ideal.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same as you, Laura. I'm thinking like it would probably be sometime within my own lifetime, like a sort of quantum leap sort of scenario. Because I think any further back than that, like things weren't that great, really.
That's why I need conditions.
Sorry, Kristen.
I need conditions on mine.
Have to be a queen.
I have to be in a position of power. Otherwise, that would suck.
I love it. It's just like that, the idea of like, oh, let's bring back the good old days. It's like, well, they weren't that great for everyone.
No. I don't think there are any really good old days in human history.
No. No, not really. We're awful species. If you could be fluent in one language instantly, what would you pick? Laura, you go first this time.
Probably like Japanese, so I could watch all of like the anime films I love. I love Studio Ghibli or Ghibli, however you would like to pronounce it. I'd love to be able to watch that in the language it's actually intended to be in.
Cool. Sounds good. Kristen?
I would 100% agree as a massive anime fan and somebody who wants to spend a lot of time in Japan throughout my life. I think learning Japanese would be amazing. And I also think it would be, the way language rewires your brain. I think it's so different to our Latin-based languages and stuff like that, that it would be cool to, I attempted to learn French in high school. Didn't really retain much to this point in time. But I feel like learning a language that's completely outside the kind of like neurological patterning that we have around languages would be really interesting for cognitive flexibility as well.
If you had to enter a talent show tomorrow, what would your act be?
Oh my God, this makes me feel ill.
You don't actually have to enter. I'm not entering you into a talent competition, just to be clear.
Kristen, you go first.
No, this is such bad questions for me because it's just showing how much of a weirdo I am. Because I'm just going back to my old talent show days, which were just all air guitar on 80s classic rock. So I feel like that's where my talents lie. So I might just have to stick with that.
Oh my gosh.
Nice.
That's a fantastic talent to have.
Yeah. Don't undersell that.
Oh my God. I don't know. This honestly, the thought of just getting up and doing something is enough to make my brain go blank. But if I had to say something, it's not as fun as Kristen's, but I used to do like open mic nights and stuff with my acoustic guitar and attempt to sing. So I suppose I would try and do that. But there's always always the thing that I find with things like talent shows is if you try and do something seriously, it's probably going to go wrong. So you should always try and do something funny like air guitar.
Well,
and
you
then
can air
there's
sing,
no issues.
and I'll do air guitar, and then we're good.
Okay,
you can just mouth the
Great.
words.
Amazing. I like this. This is a good one. If animals could, if animals could talk, which one would be the most annoying?
Like small dogs, like chihuahuas.
Dogs.
Yeah. No, but not big dogs, only small dogs.
Small dogs. It's going to have to be small dogs for
just
sure.
Small dogs.
Because I love dogs. I'm a big dog person. But
we are too.
Absolutely be the most annoying, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
Why are you working? Can we go outside now? I'm hungry. What are you doing? What are we doing tomorrow? Why are we doing this? Yeah.
It's just like Doug from Up.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, couple more, and then we'll do. So if you could only listen to one artist for the next year, who would that be?
Oh no.
Very difficult because it really depends on how you feel.
On the mood, yeah. I would say Nightwish. I don't know if you've ever heard of Nightwish before.
Yes.
You like Nightwish? Yeah, because
I don't listen to them. I've heard of them.
They're amazing. So I love like metal and just also like all forms of rock, but I like how they involve a lot of like instruments and like kind of like operatic voices. And so there's a big diversity of their music. So it depends. If I'm not in the mood for the metal, then I can just go to the more dramatic version of Phantom of the Opera that they have, and then I'll be fine.
You could easily make just separate playlists, which would still work
exactly.
well.
Yeah.
And I think I'd probably pick Ghost, kind of because for like a similar sort of reason, because they have some quite chill, almost slightly more poppy things, but also have some good kind of rock, more metal, I suppose, sort of songs. So you can get a good vibe for if you're wanting something heavier or something a little bit softer. Because I also love a lot of just like more like soft indie sort of genres as well. So I would miss that. But I'd pick Ghost.
Okay. All right. Last one then. If your inner monologue had a voice actor, who would you want to voice your inner monologue?
Oh gosh.
I'm taking it from these responses that you have got an inner monologue, because I only found out recently that some people don't.
It's constant.
I don't really.
Yeah.
I don't think I have one. I haven't been able to identify. I can like plan stuff in my mind, but there's not anyone like speaking in the background, if that makes sense. I don't know if I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
me just constantly really in the background.
Actually.
Yeah.
So Laura, I'm guessing you're the same as me then. It's literally constant.
Yes.
There's just someone narrating the whole time, right?
Very tiring.
Yeah.
Sounds terrible.
It's exhausting.
So you'd need a really good voice. The thing is, I was kind of thinking, well, I'd probably want it to be a woman, but there are so many good male voices like Ian McKellen, like that would be so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
If you had his voice in your head.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same. Not Ian McKellen. I was thinking Anthony Hopkins.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I just really like his voice, which probably doesn't say that much about me considering his actor is like Hannibal. The actor of Hannibal, but you know.
So that's really interesting though, because you've both chosen male voices, and I was thinking like Olivia Colman would be good.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
really
an
good.
Interesting one. But maybe she might be a little bit annoying at times.
Yeah. I mean, that would be kind of on brand in fairness. So
yeah, maybe that's what you want. But maybe you just want something that's a bit more lighthearted rather than too serious. And actually, would help.
I think I'd get really annoyed if I had like a really lighthearted, like toxic positivity voice in my head. I would get really annoyed really quick. Maybe that's why I don't have one. I just made sure she went away.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you both so much for playing my getting to know the guests a little bit more game. I feel like I've gotten to know you both a little bit better. So thank you so much.
Probably to your detriment at this point, and your listeners' detriment.
So I've got a couple more questions if you've got some time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the 80% Mental Podcast. I'm here with Dr. Laura Swetnam and Dr. Kristen McGinty Minister. We've been talking about the internet and such. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow and share and all of that social media stuff. A couple more questions for you, just before we finish up. The internet is there. It's out there. It exists. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. Are we basically done for as a society?
What a question.
For many reasons.
I mean, the internet might not necessarily be entirely to blame for that. But I mean, like, what are we, because, we've talked about kind of like the algorithm getting a hold of us and the fact that it's an easy way to kind of, perhaps ruin our attention, and the comments are kind of toxic, and like, yes, it can be really useful for, human connection, right? And it can connect a lot of people who otherwise might not be able to access that kind of connection, which is great, but it's also pretty awful. And yeah, like, what do we do?
I don't know what we do, but I do think that we are at a crucial time that we have to figure that out and kind of collectively try and come together and create a better space, which how power structures are currently, that's incredibly going to be incredibly difficult to do unless we have a lot of really well-meaning billionaires that somehow ethically got all their money. But I feel like I think that, have you seen the movie Ready Player One?
Yes.
Yes. And so I just think, I think that those are really interesting perspectives of how society can change around technology, and how, sports might just be esports for the most part in the future, because society is changing and our preferences are changing. So as long as we can keep in touch with our humanity as while we're using this technology, I think we're okay. But I think if we allow these kind of forces to kind of tear us away cognitively, little by little, whether that's throughout your own life personally and also as a community, like a smaller community, and then society, then I think then we're a little cooked.
I mean, like, how is it possible to do that? To like keep your humanity, because I think that's like a really like a wonderful way of looking at it. Like what do you do to do that? in the midst of this online world, and you say, talking about all those comments that you get, and the misogyny that's directed towards you, like how do you sort of keep your humanity and not just sort of despair at the world?
This is an ongoing struggle that Laura knows that I engage in pretty much on a maybe hourly basis. One of my issues as well, being autistic, is that equity is my special interest. And so I have had conversations with my partner essentially saying, I have to engage in this and I have to do it online because that's the only way I can make a difference for positive impacts on my mental health and for like engagement as my authentic self. But then how do I draw the line? Where do I draw the line on this? And that is an ongoing trying to figure out that balance. And I've done two things: is try to limit the short form content. So try to do less reels and TikTok and things like that, and make sure that my brain isn't only relying on that fast form content. So reading more books and listening to podcasts and things like that. And then I just try to just enjoy life where I can, and linking it to that kind of resilience aspect as well is you have to still enjoy yourself to be human, because what are we evolved to do? What are we socially supposed to do? Is find connection. I go outside, people say touch grass a lot, but I go outside to take the dogs for walks, do everything I can, because I grew up in Colorado, which is a very outdoorsy area. So I struggle if I'm not outside a lot. Try to meet up with friends and try to form connections with people that I care about. It's one of the reasons Laura and I did the podcast, is it's just a way to be creative with knowledge that we have and have a good time. So I think a lot of reflection about what makes you you and what makes you human is important, because that's going to look so different for everyone.
Oh, thank you for that answer. It's something that I've sort of grappled with as well, I guess. And like a lot of the stuff that I would post on Twitter would get a lot of kind of negative, fairly horrifically racist attention. And like part of me was, well, I need to engage with this stuff, and I need to sort of like broadcast the fact that this is the stuff that I'm getting, and here's my response to it, and here's why what these people are saying is, like bollocks. And like in some ways I quite sort of enjoy doing that in a weird sort of perverse kind of way, but in other ways it is really quite draining, isn't it? And I've sort of taken a bit of a step back from engaging with it on that level. But yeah, I totally get the sort of, well, like I need to kind of pull at this a little bit. But yeah, striking that balance I think is important. Laura, what about you? Any sort of thoughts on this?
So in terms of how we stop the world from imploding because of social media.
I mean, if you want to put it like that way,
yeah. I think for me, probably similar stuff what we were saying earlier. I think it is trying to be purposeful and understanding why you're going on there. I think it becomes such an automatic response just to like pick up your phone, and I do it all the time, and I'm like, how did my phone just get into my hand? This is so strange. And it's really quite uncomfortable. Like if we try and spend a bit of time away from our phones, we almost realize like how addicted we are to them kind of as a thing. So I think part of it is getting used to kind of being free of our phones, like Kristen saying, getting out into the world, like engaging with the people and the things around us. Yes, of course your phone is fantastic for allowing us to do that as well, but I think it's everything in like balance, right? And I think it always comes down to that with everything, whether it is like the food we eat, the exercise we're doing, like the TV we're watching, the social media we're engaging with. It's all got to be kind of within balance. And so I think it's just choosing what works for us and recognizing, is this helping me or is this not helping me? And just trying to make some more like active decisions about how we engage with the world around us, because it's so easy to just fall into these automatic habits.
Yeah, I know a couple of people who've done like a digital detox, and I fucking hate the phrase digital detox, but who've just sort of removed themselves from social media for like a month just to see what it feels like. And that kind of speaks to what you were saying there about this just self-awareness. Like, why am I engaging with this? What is it actually doing for me? Is it something that's like, helping me, or is it something that's actually making my life ostensibly worse. So yeah, that's just that kind of self-awareness, I think, is absolutely important there. Just to sort of finish up with then, first of all, I want to say it's been an absolute pleasure having you both on the podcast. I've really enjoyed it and so glad that you could make the time to come on. But why should people listen to your podcast? Why should they finish listening to this episode and go immediately to check out ButWhy?
Ooh, Laura, do you want to take this? Or do you want
I was going to say, you could take you go, Kristen.
You can just, if you want to see us being extra awkward, that's a great spot to do it.
Yes.
But really, we just try to, we have a lot of interest in nuance and try to kind of challenge these surface level takes that happen. And so we want to make space for that, and kind of the discussion that we were talking about today in an internet culture that really rewards the kind of really binary, oversimplified takes and thinking. If you want to just probably overanalyze things, then we'll do it for you. And that's why you maybe might come to the podcast.
Totally. If you love a good tangent and maybe a bit of a ramble, then we are totally there for that. And we always try and just be honest and kind of share our experiences about things, and also kind of share our experience of not knowing as well. So we can all just kind of, get comfortable with kind of asking these questions and realizing it's okay not to know.
Which is really interesting that you point that up, because that's actually been used against us recently in a YouTube comment as well, is admitting to the nuance of like, well, we don't want to overstep our bounds as like our knowledge in mental health. And somebody has said, well, you said you don't want to overstep your bounds, so obviously you don't know anything about mental health. And so it's just very interesting to see that this lack of cognitive flexibility and ability to understand nuance, that like, you can understand that, we have boundaries as humans and our competence, and acknowledging that is healthier than not. But if you do acknowledge that online, then that's going to be a massive problem. And that's why people don't do it a lot of the time.
Yeah. So you have to know everything about everything or nothing at all, right?
Basically.
Cool. Well, I will. I'll make sure that we've got a link to your podcast in our episode description. And if you want to get in touch with either Laura or Kristen, I'll put links to their sort of social media and details in the episode description as well, if you want to reach out. But the last thing I want to do is just to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. So Dr. Kristen McGinty-Minister, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was really, really fun. It's fun to be a guest and have like a different framing and focus of an episode. So I really enjoyed it.
No, it's been brilliant. And Dr. Laura Swetnam, thank you so much as well for taking the time to come on 80% Mental.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. And I loved the games, even if they made me feel slightly nervous. I enjoyed them. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well, if you've enjoyed what you've listened to today, don't forget to like and subscribe at 80percentmental.com. And leave a comment. Well, maybe don't leave a comment, actually. You can find us on Twitter at 80percentmental, or on Instagram. No, I'll do that again. Oh man, I got right to the end before I fucked it up.
Happens to me every time.
Yeah, find us on Twitter at EPM Podcast, or on Instagram at 80percentmental. So that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Well, I won't see you though, will I? Because it's a podcast, isn't it? So it doesn't work like that.